What's up, MetaNerdz? This complete breakdown of the Pellaeon-class Star Destroyer will pull from every resource available to understand this fascinating sort of transitional ship from the ISDs of the Empire to the wonder that is the Imperious-class Star Destroyer, which is where we finally get an Imperial ship built by Mon Calamari Shipyards. The Pellaeon's overall design seems very similar to a Star Destroyer used during the Old Republic era, but there is likely no direct connection here, just what you get with having similar wedge-shaped ships for so many years, with both of these being taller than most Star Destroyers. It was manufactured by the true victors of all galactic wars throughout history, Kuat Drive Yards, and is named after one of the most famous Grand Admirals in the history of the Empire, Gilad Pellaeon, the guy who worked closely with Thrawn, and is seen even in the new canon serving that same role via his seat on the Shadow Council. And so on all timelines, he's one of the most important members of the Imperial Remnant, and who originally died in his Turbulent-class Star Destroyer in a battle over Fondor in 41 ABY. That ship has no official images, but it is described as a pocket Star Destroyer for being a lot smaller. It is interesting because around 60 years after his death, the ship that would take his name is also described as, quote, "The ship's overall length is shortened to produce a smaller profile when firing broadsides with another capital ship, increasing the ship's longevity in combat." I know this point is beaten into viewers, but I have to mention it again. Thrawn's military philosophy was the opposite of Tarkin and Palpatine's, wanting a more nimble force that simply made sense in combat, while the Emperor put more emphasis on the psychological effect of these massive war machines, be they enormous ISDs put right above cities, and epitomized in the Death Star. So it's interesting that Pellaeon, who was closest to Thrawn, also was not worried about having the biggest ship out there, riding around in his smaller Turbulent, and this was honored in his new ship line. Something I've always joked about is that if we're fighting in space, where are all the battle spheres? Kinda like smaller Death Stars, since in space, the enemy could be coming from 360 degrees. And so if you put all your weapons equally around the sphere, no area is ignored. But why that's silly is that because you can turn to face the enemy if you are attacked, and obviously when you are on the attack, you want as many guns as possible pointing in one direction. You don't care that you can't shoot behind you. In the Scythe video, I pointed out that one of the odder details is that this blade design was so that they could put the guns on the front and have incredible damage output with just one big opening barrage. But that was always how the Star Destroyers worked anyways. Both sides of the ISD, and the slope on top and bottom, were designed so that these guns will not fire into each other, so port, starboard, dorsal, and ventral guns can all fire on a forward target. What the Pellaeon does is just answer this engineering question: can we fit all of that, and a lot more as you'll see, into a smaller profile? If you know the ship's standards in the galaxy far, far away, the next generation is always trying to build something bigger. You saw this within the Empire with the later Super Star Destroyers, and even Mon Calamari also made their largest shipyards the later out you get. And with these images of the Pellaeon and Scythe class, I think it matches most descriptions, stressing that this was powerful without trying to be so enormous. And it looks like it would be around twice the Scythe, so around 1600 meters or a mile, maybe just a little bigger than the ISD, but not multiples. We do get the weird detail that just tells us that it's less than 2500 meters, which of course would include what I'm saying, but it's a weird way to put that. I mean, my net worth is less than 42 billion. It's just when you word it like that, you make it sound like it's somewhat close to it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 1600 meters, just because proportionately it looks wider than the ISD. And we do get the exact stat of a 1000 meter width, which is just a few dewbacks thinner than the ISD. Same for looking taller. It is actually not as tall, but the grade would be steeper if the overall length was shorter, with its 400 meter height being more than 2 AT-ATs shorter than the ISD. So in images it looks taller and wider than the ISD, but only because it's crunched down. Its armament is truly incredible, and this is why it solidly earned its reputation as one of the most powerful warships in the galaxy at this time. With sheer output and the way these guns were laid out on the steeper grade, which although the ISD could fire forward, this gave it an even greater firing arc than all of the Imperial predecessors. While the designs of the turbolasers themselves were said to be very similar in design to the iconic XX-9s, but the actual numbers are 50 heavy turbolasers, just a bit less than the ISD, but 50 regular turbolasers, 40 ion cannons, a ridiculous 30 tractor beam projectors, which in and of themselves would make this one of the most able to manipulate its surroundings, from asteroid fields to utterly grabbing hold of even large craft and holding them in place against their will. But it also had an interdiction field. So we see that more than a century after Sidious's empire, the tech had progressed to the point that you didn't need a whole Star Cruiser-sized ship dedicated to gravity well creation, like we saw with the Interdictor. And then we get 50 proton torpedo launchers. The ISD had none, the Venator had 4, and I was praising the Scythe for its 16. All of this shows the leadership skill, and I was praising the Scythe for its 40. All of this shows at first the leadership skills to demand this kind of jump in progress, the actual engineering skills over at Kuat to execute on these demands. It's such a jump in more weapons and specialized tech that it really is 3 types of ship in one. From a torpedo missile gunboat style, to the capture them alive option with tractor beams and interdictors, to the standard turbolaser and ion cannon barrages. It was also known for having an impressive starfighter complement too, with 48 Predator-class fighters, which were 25% faster than the TIE, but more than 4 times the cost at an astonishing $250,000 apiece, along with 6 Noon-class Imperial shuttles, but they did have far less troops. At only 2,700 versus the 9,700 of the ISD, this 7,000 troop decrease to me points to what I've been saying, that the Imperial crew numbers were inflated, but I want to take in as many people into the military as possible, tying their fates to the success of the Emperor, making them resistant to rebel propaganda when their paycheck was coming from Palpatine. And it played the same role as the massive ships. You could fill a rebel sympathizing city with as many troops as possible, making resistance seem futile. And if anyone did strike an outpost or checkpoint, it also helps Imperial propaganda to have higher death counts attributed to rebels. Hundreds or thousands of stormtroopers killed makes for a much more impressive headline, makes the rebels seem even more dangerous. Now this internal shot of the hangar gives us a great look at this unique option that the Predator design gives you in terms of storage racks. With the wings folded straight back and the cockpit facing down, the repulsors that allow all ships to float off the ground would be used to manipulate into the correct orientation. Though I do think there is a huge missed opportunity here to just have them drop straight down and correct in space or an atmosphere, but you see it just has this standard forward-facing hangar, so the fighters would have to make a 90-degree rotation as they exit. And on both sides of the hangar are traffic control centers that would be useful when taking on big cargo loads or some unique craft, as the hangar space was large and could accommodate a wide array of ships, like invasion transports or gunboats. The reactor seems far forward when compared to other Star Destroyers, and it's so odd that many suspect that this is just an auxiliary one. Maybe mostly for the upped arsenal of guns alongside the top ridge, and there was likely a main reactor hiding in this whole section towards the rear, which would power everything else, feeding into this really straightforward engine thruster layout. You will see design cues at the rear coming from the Venator, and what is called the tail fin section that becomes even more obvious in the later Imperious class. With just one main engine, 4 secondary and 2 tertiary, being all you really need to vector left, right, up or down, making tighter turns by firing one side in reverse while the other side is firing forward. We don't get speed stats, but since everything is improving in this era, I would say that it has to be around 1,200 km per hour in atmosphere, and into the 80 megalight rating, meaning it would be as fast as a TIE fighter in atmosphere and a CR-90 in space. It might seem crazy to picture this hauling through the skies like a TIE, but there were Mon Calamari capital ships that could do that decades earlier. Inside the bridge tower, we see at least one conference room, which is pretty luxurious, with a stylish carpet and bar area, far from the Spartan pure gray interiors of the previous Empire. And the command bridge is inspired by the Venator with the surrounding Durasteel viewing windows, as commanders across all eras really do prefer to have organic eyes on their environment, with crew pits encircling the deck filled with various engineers. Most of the Pellaeons served as command ships and flagships in Imperial fleets, with large sector fleets having dozens of these, which in translation to the firepower and range of options with those torpedoes and an interdictor field, this translates to the output of dozens of entire fleets from previous generations, while smaller fleets would be anchored by just one Pellaeon. But again, it's doing the role of at least 3 major specialized ships here, so a century later, even more remote areas of the galaxy could be as locked down as major ports from the time of the Galactic Civil War, and they were always accompanied by smaller support and patrol craft. The most notable being the Imperial fast frigate, which was a quarter the size, so around 400 meters max, while sacrificing shielding and armor for unexpected quick speeds and intense firepower output. It is a really scary era when the Mon Calamari engineers in the Galactic Alliance were trying to do the same thing with just weapon dumps, almost hit-and-run tactics with these major fleets. These fast frigates were so useful but dangerous to the crew involved, as they were the spear point opening up any battle, to the point that many of the Imperial officers that rose through the ranks with special honors gained their fame from being brave commanders of IFFs. Together, these were the core of all fleets throughout this latest iteration of the Empire, especially since, something that I forgot to mention is that the shields were specialized to provide more protection for the bridge, with next-gen generators stored in this main hull section pulling from what I also suspect is another reactor. So this section is just more protected by the guns and starfighter complement, but also shielding like never seen before on any Star Destroyer. So they could drink their rarest Alderaanian wine in peace in these fancy blue-steeled chairs. It all allowed the Pellaeon to act like one of the most secure forward or mobile bases in history, allowing the Imperial strategists to feel like the area that was gained would stay in their hands. And I'm very excited about our new sponsor, Raycon. What a perfect time to get this sponsor starting off the new year right with more fun and focus with Raycon's everyday earbuds. It's kind of funny how many background sounds I've not been hearing with my old earbuds, even details in these MetaNerd videos that I'm hoping to fix. I don't know about you, but I'm wearing earbuds for tons of hours every single day. My go-to is audiobooks with chores and workouts, conversations with friends and loved ones. And it costs around half the price of most premium audio brands and now has active noise cancellation, which is also rare at this price range. The newest version gives you 32 hours of battery life, and if they do go fully dead in just 10 minutes of charging, you get 90 minutes of listening time. You have really easy to select options perfect for different scenarios, like bass sound for music, to awareness mode when you want to listen to something but you can't zone out completely, and overall they are just really comfortable. So go to buyraycon.com/MetaNerdz to get 15% off site-wide. That's 15% off anything you want at the Raycon website when you go to buyraycon.com/MetaNerdz. When it was introduced in 104 ABY, it was quickly seen as a worthy successor to the ISD, and was able to respond to the smaller, swifter, and uniquely deadly Scythe class, with those interdictor fields being useful to putting a stop to enemies' hit-and-run tactics. When Darth Krayt and his new Sith Order betrayed the Fel Empire, some of the captains of Pellaeons across the galaxy did stay loyal to Emperor Roan Fel, and would help in the efforts of this new Imperial remnant and exile force. By 137 ABY, we see many of them kept in orbit and near his stronghold on Bastion. And in that same year, we see one used by Darth Strife to search for Jedi survivors on Ossus. Though his troops fell victim to a mind trick and reported that they could not find anyone alive, the Sith sensed something in the Force, and used the Pellaeon to deliver an orbital bombardment on the Jedi Academy. Though the forces loyal to Emperor Roan Fel would continue to fight in Pellaeon vs. Pellaeon epic space battles that marked one of the most deadly civil wars the galaxy had ever seen, with two Imperial forces, one aided by Sith, the other by the Galactic Alliance Remnant, slugging it out with more firepower than generations before, all throughout the late 130s. So that's it for the breakdown, and as for behind the scenes facts, Sean Cook, who made all the unique ship designs for the Legacy era, said he wanted to go with a taller cathedral look versus just making more elongated behemoths like the Super Star Destroyers. I can't believe I've been doing this for so long, but I finally see that in the Star Wars role-playing game Saga Edition core rulebook, it says that weapon batteries means that there are 10 of the same weapon clustered together. I've heard everything from 4 to 8, maybe that's just fan numbers floating in the ether. And to be fair, I'm sure there's tons of things that go against this rule, but I didn't realize that there was at least a source that gave us a hard number. So from now on, if I see weapons batteries, we're just going to times that by 10. Some cool out-of-universe lore is that this ship seen in the sacking of Coruscant was a Pellaeon. It was used as a placeholder while the Harrower-class dreadnought design was being finalized, but it clearly isn't a Harrower. So in universe lore, we just don't know what type of ship this is, and you could say that Kuat Drive Yards would have taken over the IPs of Tayrab ship manufacturing, which was used by the Sith Empire during the Old Republic era. So Kuat had this design in some old folder, and was bringing it back thousands of years later. Sadly, one of the most visually interesting aspects of the ship is this strange array on the nose, but we don't get any details on this, and it varies so much across different media. I could do the old "it's a different variant" trick, and it is the same artist designing the Galactic Alliance ships with the modular nose attachments seen in the Shashore, but to be fair, nothing else indicates that that's what's going on here. I would say that since we don't see the forest of antenna on the top of the bridge, or the globe structures like an ISD, these must be antennas of all sorts for comms and navigation, though putting it right up front does seem like a bad idea. Maybe they play some role in that great tractor beam projector array, or in creating the interdictor field, since those are all some unusual features to pack into the ship, and you get this unusual structure at the bow. But let me know what you think of that, and this ship in general. If you want to read about it yourself, check out the Legacy 2006 comics 0 and Half, which set up this time period, and the Legacy era campaign guide. Members get early access to videos for just $1. Subscribe to see more and check out these recommendations, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, Sometimes Star Wars ship progress actually makes sense, and the Force will be with you, always.